The day Aryan Malhotra placed a cheap plastic ring on Mira's finger, his entire family laughed. Not quietly, not behind closed hands. They laughed openly, loudly, like it was the funniest joke their gilded, chandelier-lit lives had ever produced. And Mira stood there, barefoot on their marble floor, wearing a faded cotton salwar. And she smiled. Not because she was weak, not because she didn't understand what was happening. She smiled because she already knew something they didn't, and what she knew would eventually reduce every person in that room to silence. But to understand what happened that day and everything that came after, you need to understand the woman they were so certain they could break. Mira Devi grew up in a small village called Bolgar, the eldest daughter of a school teacher father who believed the most dangerous thing you could give a poor child was knowledge. Not dangerous for the child, dangerous for the people who had decided the child should stay poor. He filled their small home with books. He drove her 40 kilometers to a district library every month and let her carry as many as her arms could hold. She always carried as many as her arms could hold. By the time she was 19, life intervened the way it always does for people who cannot afford interruptions. Her father had a stroke. Medical bills emptied their savings in 3 months. Her siblings were still in school. So Mia made a decision. She deferred her future and went to work. Every morning, 4 o'clock. Overcrowded bus, 10-hour factory shift, come home, cook, check homework, sit with her father, sleep 5 hours, repeat. She did this for 2 years without bitterness, without breaking, without once believing that this was where her story ended. And then Aryan Malhotra found her. Not the other way around. Men like Aryan don't meet people, they identify targets. He was 26, the only son of Rajiv Malhotra, owner of Malhotra Textile Industries, which included, by a coincidence that felt like fate, but was something much darker, the factory where Mira worked. He had come to inspect the facility. He noticed her immediately, not because she was performing for his attention, but because she wasn't. She was simply, quietly, undeniably beautiful, with dark eyes that looked at you like they already knew what you were going to say and had already decided what they thought of it. He told her she had pretty eyes. She thanked him and went back to work. He was not used to being dismissed. What started as attraction curdled fast into something uglier. Aryan went back to his friends. They laughed, they dared him. The dare became a bet. Pursue the factory girl, win her trust, bring her to the altar in front of everyone, and then expose the entire courtship as a game. A performance. Prove that women like her could be picked up and put down like objects, that they were not real in the way that mattered. This was the plan. He made a bet. He wrote it down. He shook hands on it. And then he spent 4 months actually getting to know Mira Devi and began to understand, slowly and with growing discomfort, that he had severely miscalculated. She was not impressed by his car. She was not dazzled by his restaurants. When he took her to the finest hotel in the city, she looked at the menu with the same calm expression she wore everywhere, and he felt something he could not name, because her composure was real, not performed. She asked him questions about books he had never read, ideas he had never considered. She laughed at things he hadn't intended to be funny, and didn't laugh at things he had carefully arranged to be charming. She looked at him like she was reading him, not unkindly but completely. He told himself what he was feeling was just method acting, deep immersion in the performance. He told himself that for 4 months. Then he proposed. Mia hesitated. She looked at him with those eyes and said, "Aryan, I am not what your family will want. Are you prepared for that?" He said yes. The Malhotra family's reaction was precisely what she had anticipated and precisely what he had not prepared himself to witness. His mother, Sunita Malhotra, catalogued Mira's imperfections the way an appraiser catalogues damage, loudly, publicly, with the confident efficiency of a woman who had never had to pretend politeness to anyone she considered beneath her. The worn sandals, the inexpensive fabric, the calloused hands, the father in a wheelchair, the factory job, all of it delivered with a smile, all of it designed to wound. Mira answered every question without flinching, with a patience so absolute it seemed less like endurance and more like choice, because it was. The wedding was arranged quickly because the Malhotras wanted it done. Small, quiet, embarrassing for her. 400 of their own guests, Mira's family tucked in a corner near the back, her mother holding her father's hand in his wheelchair, both dressed in their finest, which was not fine enough for this room, and everyone in the room made certain they knew it. Arian's friends were there. They had cameras. They were waiting. The ceremony began. The priest chanted. The fire burned. And then, at the moment of the vows, Arian's best friend Dev stood up with a microphone and the expression of a man about to deliver the greatest punchline of his life. Sorry to interrupt, but I think everyone here deserves to know the truth about what's actually happening today. Arian didn't fall in love with this girl. He made a bet. A bet that he could get a village factory girl to marry him, bring her here in front of all of us, and then... He did not finish, because Arian stood up, and the look on his face was not triumph. It was not the expression of a man delivering a punchline. It was shame. Real, exposed, undeniable shame. "Sit down, Dev," he said. "Arian, come on, we'll just sit down." Silence hit the room like a wall. Arian turned to Mira, and Mira looked back at him. Something passed between them. An acknowledgement, a reckoning, the specific silence of a truth both people already know. "I know about the bet," Mira said. She said it softly, clearly, to Arian, but loud enough for the whole room. Arian's face collapsed. "I have known since the second month," she continued. "A factory supervisor told me. A woman who didn't want to see another worker humiliated." She paused. "Let's settle." I said yes anyway. The room made a sound, confusion, shock, 100 whispered questions. "Why?" Arian asked. All armor gone, just a man asking the only question that still mattered. Mira was quiet for one long moment. "Because I believed you were more than the worst thing you were willing to do." She looked at his mother, at Dev's cameras, at the whole assembled room that had gathered to watch her be destroyed. "I was wrong about the timing," she said. "I thought you would stop it before today." She looked back at Arian. "But I was not wrong about you." The wedding resumed. Nothing else did. The months that followed were a slow and methodical humiliation. Sunita Malhotra operated in the register of exclusion, never overtly cruel, always precisely targeted. Mira was not introduced to guests. Her suggestions were smiled past at dinner. At festivals, she was assigned tasks, serving, arranging, cleaning, while everyone else sat. When she arrived at a family gathering wearing a beautiful deep green silk sari she had saved for, Sunita appeared beside her within seconds and said, loud enough for the nearest cluster of relatives to absorb every syllable, "Oh, Mira, is that new? Very colorful, very village wedding." Then she walked away. Arian saw it. He said nothing. That was what hurt most. Not the cruelty itself. Mira had seen cruelty and understood it clearly. What hurt was watching Arian see it and look away. His face would tighten. Something would move behind his eyes. And then he would choose silence. He was not a bad man. That was the tragedy of him. He had simply been trained to prioritize the comfort of powerful people over the dignity of everyone else, and that training ran deep. He came to her room that night. "I'm sorry," he said, standing in the doorway. Not quite meeting her eyes. "I know you are," Mia said. She was reading. She did not put the book down. She shouldn't have said that. No. I should have, yes, she said, quietly, without anger. You should have. He stood there a moment longer. Then, Mira, I don't know how to. I know, she said. Go to sleep, Arian. He went. She sat in that small back bedroom, the secondary room overlooking the service lane, not the bridal suite she was never given. And when the house went quiet, she opened her laptop. She made calls. She reviewed documents. She spent 3-4 hours every night working with a precision and focus that years of deprivation had sharpened into something almost frightening. She was preparing something big. And no one in the Malhotra house had any idea. Here is what they did not know about Mira Devi. Her father, Rameshwar Devi, had not always been a village school teacher. Before Borga, before the quiet life of books and bicycles, he had walked away from a family of considerable means, land, investments, a name that carried weight in certain circles, after a profound moral disagreement with his own father. He had chosen his values over his inheritance, moved to a village, married the woman he loved, and become a teacher. His father had never formally disinherited him, believing, perhaps, that poverty would eventually bring his son back. It hadn't, but Rameshwar's father had died 3 years ago, and the will had never been changed. Mira was the only legal heir. A lawyer had arrived at their village home 18 months before the wedding, a formal grey-suited man who seemed profoundly confused by the mud walls and mango trees, carrying documents and asking for Rameshwar Devi's eldest child. The number he showed her had made her sit very still in silence for a very long time. It was not abstract wealth, it was land, compounded investments, assets grown untouched for decades. A number that was, she calculated it 3 times to be certain, considerably larger than the total net worth of Malhotra Textile Industries. She had spent 14 months since then in careful, private preparation, legal consultations, financial assessments, document filings, all of it done quietly because she had not yet decided what to do with what she knew. Because there are things you do not reveal until the moment of maximum readiness, until the person being shown the truth is finally in a position to receive it. She had considered walking away. From the factory, from Arian's courtship, from the whole constructed trap. She could have disappeared back to her village with documents in hand and let lawyers handle everything from a safe distance. She had chosen differently. Because she had watched Arian Malhotra for 4 months and seen something she thought, with the right pressure applied at the right moment, could become something else. She was not naive. She knew she might be entirely wrong. But she had decided the experiment was worth running, and if she was wrong, she had the documents. The revelation came 8 months into their marriage. Not because Mira announced it. It came through the overconfidence of people who believe they already know everything that matters. Sunita Malhotra, at a gathering of the family's social circle, decided she had been patient long enough. 8 months of trying to erode Mira's composure and watching it remain intact, solid, unbothered, infuriating. She waited until the room was full and comfortable, and then she said it. I have welcomed this girl out of love for my son. But let us be honest. She has no family, no background, nothing to offer except a pretty face and a factory wage. A village girl. In my house, she laughed. Several people laughed with her. Some mistakes take time to correct. That's an interesting characterization. Every head in the room turned. Mira stood in the doorway. She had heard everything. Her expression was entirely calm. She walked into the room without hurry and sat down in the center seat. The host's chair, Sunita's chair, by unspoken rule in every gathering in this house for 20 years. She sat in it like she had sat in it 1,000 times. Sunita's face moved through several expressions very quickly. Mira placed 3 documents on the table. One, then the next. Then the third. arranged with the quiet precision of a woman who has been waiting for exactly this moment. My grandfather was Dhruv Pratap Devi, she said. A pause. She watched comprehension begin its slow move across faces. He owned significant land in this region. He invested heavily through the 70s and 80s. He died 3 years ago without dissolving the family inheritance. She looked at Sunita directly. I am his only legal heir. The transfer of assets was completed 2 months ago. Absolute silence. The documents are there, she said, if anyone would like to review them. No one moved. Sunita Malhotra's face underwent a transformation that was painful to witness. The confident contempt draining out of it in real time, replaced by something she had never had to feel in a room full of her peers, smallness. Arian stood at the edge of the room. He had come in during her speech. His face held shock, shame, awe, and something that might, if you looked long enough, have been the beginning of real respect. I'm not finished, Meera said. She still did not look at him. Her eyes stayed on Sunita. I did not marry into this family because I needed anything from it. I came here because I chose to. I have been treated in this house like poverty was a character flaw. Like where I came from made me less. Her voice did not rise. It simply continued, steady, clear, absolute. My father gave up everything to live by his values. He raised me in a small house with no money and enormous wealth. Because real wealth is what you know, what you can do, and who you are when nothing is watching and there is nothing to gain. She looked finally at Arian. I have been watching this family, she said. I know exactly who you are. A pause. I also know who you could be. That is the only reason I am still here. She picked up the documents. She stood. She walked out of the room, and the sound of her footsteps on the marble floor was the only sound in the entire house. Arian followed her. He found her at the corridor window, looking out at the garden in the late evening light. And when he came to stand beside her, she did not move away. You knew, he said, everything, before the wedding. Yes, the bet, the money. All of it. Not all of it, she said. I didn't know you would stand up when Deb stood up. That was the first time you surprised me. He was quiet for a long moment. The garden outside was warm and soft in the fading light. I don't know how to apologize for what I did, he said. No, she said, not yet. Will you teach me? She looked at him, the way she had always looked at him. Those eyes that already knew what you are going to say. But now something was different in them. Not warmth replacing caution, something more complex. The look of a person who has walked through fire and come out holding something they decided, deliberately, was worth keeping. That depends, she said, on whether you're willing to actually learn. He was. It was not easy and it was not fast. Real change never is. Arian Malhotra spent the following years becoming someone different, slowly, with effort, with the specific difficulty of a person dismantling beliefs that had been built into him since childhood. He apologized to Meera not once, but across years, in actions more than words, which is the only form of apology that means anything. He stood up to his mother in ways that cost him comfort. He began to look at the people in his factory, really look at them, and see human beings rather than resources. When Meera took over her inheritance and began making investments, several of them went directly into the factory. Better conditions, better wages. She did not announce it. She did not make it a performance. She simply made it happen, the way she had always made things happen, quietly, precisely, without requiring anyone's applause. Sunita Malhotra never fully forgave Meera, but she stopped making comments at dinner. She stopped the small knives disguised as conversation. From a woman like Sunita, that was as close to an apology as the world was going to get. and Mira accepted it for what it was, not what she might have wished it to be. Her parents came to the city. Her father's medical care improved. Her mother embroidered saris because she loved it, finally, not because she needed the income, and it turns out love produces far more beautiful work than necessity, and Mira completed the education she had deferred years ago. She enrolled, she graduated, she enrolled further, she graduated further. From her inheritance, she built a foundation that funded scholarships for children in villages like Borga. Children whose fathers had bookshelves and whose mothers had talent and who needed nothing except the removal of the single obstacle standing between them and everything they were capable of becoming. She named the foundation after her father. He cried when she told him. He thought she was asleep. She wasn't. She remembered that moment for the rest of her life. There is a thing this story is not saying. It is not saying that Mira won because she turned out to be secretly wealthy. That is not the point. The wealth was never the point. The point is what she carried before anyone knew about the wealth. She was extraordinary before the documents existed. She was worth something before any lawyer arrived at her door. She walked into a marble-floored room full of people designed to make her feel invisible. And she was not invisible to herself, not for one day. Not once. That specific knowledge, held steady under years of weight, is the thing no inheritance can create and no cruelty can take. She always knew her worth. The world just finally caught up. And so I leave you with this. Not a comfortable question, but an honest one. If you had been Mira, knowing the bet, carrying the secret, watching him stand up at the altar when it mattered, after everything they put you through, after every small knife and every silent room and every night in that back bedroom with the window facing the service lane, would you have forgiven him? Or would you have taken the documents, walked away, and never looked back? Think carefully, because your answer says less about Ariane and everything about what you believe people are capable of becoming.